Okay, I think we're live. Hopefully we're live. I'm trying something different today. I signed up for StreamYard, just a free thing, to see if I like it, and we'll see if that works. This way I can share my screen if I want to, and I think I can display comments. So, hey Jake, how's it going? Priscilla, awesome. I got your questions all lined up. Let me see. I think I can put up a little follow me on Instagram, Colin DeWay. So, hopefully this is working. Somebody could leave a comment just to let me know you can hear me and that everything's working okay. That would be fantastic. And we'll get after it. So if you're on the replay, no delay. And if you drop a like, that would be very much appreciated. And let's get into it. So just let me know any questions you have. And good morning, Kim. And thank you, Tracy. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to try sharing right away here since I only have 3 questions lined up, and that's okay. Hopefully we'll have a good stream here. And good morning. Let me see. How do I do that again? I think it's this one. All right. What are your thoughts on exposure therapy to stop binge eating? It's a concept where you expose and allow yourself a small amount of trigger foods every day until it's no longer a problem. Or no longer a trigger. So I've never called it exposure therapy before, but it's very much in line with how I tend to do things with people with the flexible dieting approach. So what I mean by that is I'm all about having an inclusive diet and not looking at foods as good or bad and not feeling guilty or beating yourselves up about foods. But the only way you can start including these types of foods, especially ones that tend to set you off in the past because you viewed them as bad and you have a tendency to go over or whatever reason there may be, is absolutely just that, learning to include them. The struggle can be you're so used to anytime you have them that you just kind of go crazy on it. But by planning ahead of time and allowing yourself these things in moderation, it can be very helpful. The problem is, like, usually it's because of large cravings, right? And it's one of those things, like, you don't typically crave something you have frequently, or you can have whenever you want. So if you're including them over time, these cravings start to go away, and you learn to include things you like. And what you can do, one of the best strategies I think there is to just, if you're tracking, you're going to plug in that food that you want, plug it into your tracker right away before anything else, and do it the day before too. And just say, okay, I'm going to have this treat. I'm going to plug it in. And then you plan the rest of your day around that. You plan that treat into your day. You plan when you're going to have that. When you do have it, don't do it like mindlessly, like watching TV, like really sit down and enjoy it. If you have to portion out a serving or whatever, do that, put the rest of the stuff away, go into another room, sit down and just really focus on enjoying it and just being okay with being done at that point. It'll take a little more willpower up front in the beginning stages as you're not used to this. But over time, it should get better. And I find that can be a very useful strategy. And even if you're not tracking, okay, just planning, you can still plan the same thing, right? Like, you can still just say, okay, I'm going to have this at this time and just be okay with it. And I think that can work very well. And then for your other question, let me see. If your recommended rep range is 8 reps on shoulder press and you can surpass this with 20-pound dumbbells to 15 reps. So I increased the weight. Next available dumbbell is 25 pounds. That's a very large jump, but could hardly get 5 reps. So what should I do to keep progressing on the presses? So I would just do more reps until you get a bit stronger. So 15 to 25 is a huge increase. I mean, what is that, like a 70% increase or something? Like it's a large increase, and it's going to be hard to go from that bump. Like, you could make that bump, but like you said, you're going to do a lot less reps, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's benefits to all rep ranges. I'm actually planning on doing a video about that soon, about the different rep ranges and things. But let's just say you can do, what did you say? 8 reps on shoulder press can surpass with 20-pound dumbbells to 15. So I looked at that wrong. So it's still 20-25, still a large increase. But so if you're doing 15 reps with 20 pounds, then maybe the next time you do 16 or 17 reps or whatever you can do, right? And over time, you're still going to increase training volume, which is the most important thing. But you're going to you're going to be able to make progress to that. And then eventually you'll be able to go up in weight. It may not be 15, but you'll be able to do more than just 5 or so. And that will help keep you progressing in the right direction. All right, not a lot of comments today. This hopefully won't be too short, but I kind of sprung at last moment, I know. And YouTube just hasn't been that busy lately, I've been noticing. So last one on here. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. And let me take a sip of coffee first. All right. So I think I've hit my calorie limit on week 15 of reverse. I'm not sure though. There's days I can't eat anymore. Then there's days I can't eat enough. Weight has fluctuated 5 pounds, so trying hard to stay patient. Wasn't sure if I should stay here for a while and to adapt. I started around 1,300 calories, now at 1,950. That's awesome. I've yo-yo dieted for over 10 years. Bad relationship with food. Now doing weights and cardio. I want to gain strength and definition. Thank you for all you do. Oh, so you're very welcome. Thank you. And so, with regards to your calorie limit, the first thing that comes to mind, and let me make myself bigger here. How do I do that? So maybe Jake, like that's the problem. Like if you do them too frequently, you're not gonna have enough questions, but I want to be available. So it's going to be one of those things where I'm gonna have to find a kind of a balance of, okay, how much is too frequently, how much is not enough. Okay. So anyway, the thing that comes to mind first is the fact that you're seeing some days where you're like super hungry and then other days where you're not hungry at all. That tells me that your hunger hormones are still kind of off right now and you haven't got them to a point where they're a bit more stable. So that's step number one. Is I think you still have some time to go yet, which is not surprising considering your history. But the thing that you can do with being really full, so if you're having a hard time eating all your calories when you're up to 1950, a lot of times this can happen because we always are told that we need to eat clean and stay away from junk food or even just normal like whole foods, but the varieties that are lower fiber and things like that. So what ends up happening is because we're afraid to include some of these other foods into our diet, we start increasing calories. We do it all through like clean foods, the diet foods, the really filling foods, a lot of vegetables and lean meats and quinoa and all this different stuff, right? Well, that stuff is all very filling, which is great during a dieting phase because it helps you feel full and not feel overly hungry when you're cutting. The problem is in a reverse, now calories are getting higher. It's making you really full and making it hard for you to get all your calories in. So by including less filling foods into your diet, that can allow you to not feel quite so full as you get increases in calories. And so, yeah, I mean, does that mean you have to eat junk food? No, you certainly can, of course. I mean, you typically don't want to make a large percent of your diet from junk food anyway, but you can certainly include some. So if you want to have some ice cream or whatever else to help you get your calories in and not feel so full, that's a strategy. But even if you want to keep it more whole foods, start substituting like more filling for less filling sources. Like instead of brown rice, have white or jasmine rice. Instead of a sweet potato, you have a regular, like a russet potato. Instead of like the whole wheat varieties of breads and pastas and things like that, you have the regular ones. Things like that just aren't quite so filling and easy to get in. And adding like olive oil and different oils to your foods, that's a very easy way to get calories up and give you health benefits from those properties as well. And that'll bring up calories without making you feel full. And then drinking your calories too, and not necessarily, I know it's always frowned upon to drink your calories, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. And especially if you do something like a intra-workout carb drink, even if it's just a regular Gatorade or Powerade or whatever, or something that you mix, you can make a nice big serving of a lot of carbs that you can drink during your workout. Use that to fuel your performance, to have something tasty to drink while you're working out, get your calories up without you feeling full. And that can be helpful too. And then where protein sources are often very filling, your meat sources and things like that, if you're not vegan. And having more protein shakes and stuff too, like that's totally fine. So drinking your calories can be a way to do that as well. But sounds like you got work to do. And certainly as far as should you stay here, yeah, I mean, you can. And you can give it time. If you are finding that you're relatively stable and you're okay with that and you want to give it more time, then go ahead and give it more time. But you've got plenty of time that, given your reverse, I would reverse, or excuse me, given your history, I would reverse as long as you can. And I would really strongly urge to give it like a full year. I mean, do you have to go that long? Not necessarily, but the longer you can wait, the better off you're going to be. And hopefully that's helpful. All right, what else do we have here? Hopefully. I should be clicking these. Aha, so fancy. All right, what do we got here? Aaron Stern says protein doesn't store as body fat, but Lane view is once calories is over, potential to gain fat. What happens if you eat a surplus of just protein? So, I don't think we necessarily know for sure. I can tell you 100% that protein is the safest overeat by far. And so what I mean by that is, like, let's just say you're at the end of the day and you've met all your targets and you're still super hungry and you're like, oh man, I'm just starving. I have to eat something. Like if you're at the point where like you're just like, I can't take this. I have to eat protein, whether it's like straight protein, egg whites, tuna, chicken breast, whatever, something that's just mostly protein. And it's the chances of it being stored as body fat are minimal. And there's been some interesting data, some interesting research that while it doesn't necessarily prove anything, it shows that it's much less likely to gain additional body fat from protein. And there was one that, I should try to pull it up here. There was one that it looked at like people who consumed more protein over their normal daily allotment of food didn't gain additional body fat. And in one instance, it was like, I think an additional 1,400, an additional 400 or so calories. And they didn't get any additional body fat. Let me see. It's so small now. See, I'm trying to get a hang of this. Oh, wait, here. You can even go big, I think. Let me hide this. And let me hide that. Okay. Hey, see, I'm getting the hang of this. Let's see. Protein ingestion to simulate my favorite protein synthesis. I don't think that's it, actually. I might not waste your time here. Let me briefly look. I save a lot of research, but I'm not sure if I've got this one saved. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So. Sorry about that. All right, I'm back. Okay. Anyway, and then there was another study. They looked at, what did they look at? They looked at an extremely high protein intake versus like a normal intake. So, I typically recommend around 1 gram per pound of body weight, right? There's different scenarios, a lot of different ways to do things, but around 1 gram per pound. There was a group that did that. They did 1 gram per pound, and then it was another group that did like 2 grams per pound to see if it would like build more muscle. And I'm going off of memory here, so don't take this word for word. But what they found was there was no difference in muscle, which is not surprising because you just can't utilize that much protein for muscle. But what they did find was, even though the group that was doing double the protein ate a lot more calories, I can't remember the exact numbers. It was several hundred. I think it might have even been like 800 more calories. They didn't see any additional body fat in that group. So does that mean that protein won't be stored as body fat? Not necessarily, but it shows that it definitely at least minimizes the chances. That protein just has so many processes to go through in the body that it just makes it very difficult to store as body fat. So it's just one more reason why I'm always pounding on the table, pounding. Protein. It's so underrated and so important, and it's fought so much. And it's just, besides the fact that it builds and maintains muscle mass, besides the fact that it helps you feel full, it's that thermic effect of food. And you can do a calorie equated diet, and it's been shown time and time again. Calories equated, more protein equals better fat loss, over and over and over again. It's just really important. And I'm going to talk about this in one of my upcoming videos here. I was very surprised. I did this poll. Where is it here? I think it's up here somewhere. Here, which is your favorite macro? Carbs 50%. So the 354 votes, 50% said carbs, 8% said fat, 42% said protein. This blew my mind. It really did, because as a coach who's worked with, I don't even know, like 400 plus clients at this point, I am constantly like it's like pulling teeth trying to get people to eat protein, but people overshoot fat all the time. So I'm not sure if maybe I wasn't very clear about what I meant by favorite macro. What I kind of meant was, okay, which one do you enjoy the most? And it's interesting because a lot of times too, like I fill out on the application, I have you fill out, okay, do you prefer carbs or fat? And almost everybody says carbs, but when you have them do like a diet recall, people eat a lot of fat. And when I give them calorie targets, macro targets, fat is by far the one that's overate the most. And I think there's a lot of different reasons for this. I think a lot of times too, foods that we look at as carbs are actually just as much fat, if not more. Things like donuts and stuff like that, where we typically think of them as carbs, but when you look at it, there's just as many, if not more, calories from fat than there are from carbs in those food sources. And that's kind of like the thing with sugar too. We always look at sugar, but it's usually sugar mixed with fat. That's the stuff that people really like, right? And we always have to remember calories. Fat has over double the calories that carbs have, so they add up really fast. 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So it adds up a lot faster. So I thought that was really interesting. I may do a video on that topic at some point, which, by the way, if you are interested in online coaching, just head to colinthewaytraining.com and fill out an application. And what I'll do is I'll shoot a video just like I'm talking to you right now. I will shoot a video going over your application and kind of give you some of my thoughts so we make sure we're on the same page. And I'll shoot it your way. It will go to your email. If you don't see an email from me within 24 hours, check your junk folders. They go there all the time, unfortunately. It's very frustrating and annoying, but what are you going to do? So let me see. Hopefully that answered that question. And let's go back to just me for a second. And let's see. Do you think fat cells can fill up with water and show weight gain or lack of weight loss as a placeholder? Then you get a swoosh type effect where you see a drop in weight on the scale. So this was a theory that I heard about a few years back. I would say 3 or 4 years ago or so. And when I first heard it, I was like, man, that just really makes a lot of sense, because when someone's in a fat loss phase, it's not uncommon for their weight to stay pretty steady for a while. And then all of a sudden they see a big drop in weight one day and it just stays down. Like we all know that weight can fluctuate up and down on a daily basis by several pounds. So it's not abnormal to see an increase or even a decrease of a couple pounds one day, but then it just kind of comes right back around that same level again, just because there's so many different reasons we do see water weight go up and down. But sometimes you'll stay pretty steady, see a big decrease in the scale, and then it stays down there, and then you move on, and then that can happen again. So the theory is, what happens is you lose fat, the fat cells release fat, and then water fills up into those cells, takes up that space again. That's why you're not seeing a drop in the scale, even though you've lost fat, and then eventually that water comes out, and then you see the drop in the scale. I don't believe this now. I can't prove it either way, and the theory isn't proven either. But the reason I don't believe that it's true is because I see the same thing happen in a reverse diet. All right, sometimes people will be steady. They'll be really close to the same weight. Week after week, it'll be the same, and then boom, they'll increase a pound or two, and it'll stay. And you're like, well, what the hell? What just happened? Like, I don't know. But if it was water, it wouldn't make sense if you've been in a reverse and everything, and then all of a sudden, like, you're just going to shoot a bunch of water into the fat cells, and then it's going to take over as fat. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? So if I didn't see that happening in a reverse, going the other direction, I would be much more prone to say that's a real thing. But since it happens in both directions, I just can't see how that could be the case. I could be wrong. It's just my personal opinion. But either way, why it happens is kind of irrelevant. You just got to know that it does happen sometimes, and watch for it in either direction, and not get freak out or get too upset if things aren't moving, because that can happen. No problem, Priscilla. Just come back for the replay and see what you missed. There's not a lot, so it might not be much longer anyway. Yes, hit that like, please. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Probably in reference to the protein thing, I'm assuming possibly to do with thermic effect of food and the body having to work harder to store protein as fats rather than store fat that's already fat. Yes, so the thermic effect of food is a big part of why. Like that's what I mean by it has to go through so many processes to be stored as body fat. The thermic effect of food is so high. It's usually around 25 to 30%, which if you don't know what thermic effect of food means, is basically how many calories your body burns just processing the food you eat. And this is where the calories in versus calories out argument gets screwed up. People say, well, not all calories are created equal, which I mean is kind of true and not true at the same time, which I'll explain. The calories into your mouth are the same. It's the amount of energy in the food. So 100 calories from broccoli is the same as 100 calories from a donut going into your mouth, right? It's the same. It's what happens inside the body as it then releases, it then burns up some calories, processing that food, that changes the net calories, the calories in versus calories out. So if you have a food that's high fiber, high protein, these are very demanding, high thermic effective food. So they're going to burn around 25 to 30% of whatever you consume. Whereas if it's just straight fat, it's only like 2 to 3%, and carbs is about 5 to 8%. So fat is by far the lowest thermic effective food. And that makes a very big difference. Plus, muscle is also what builds muscle. The more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism is going to be. It's metabolically demanding to have more muscle, not to mention what it does for body composition. I keep saying it over and over. Protein, protein, protein. Oh, here's a good one. I hear this a lot. Rebecca, I want to weight train, but concerned it will increase hunger and binging. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely see increases in hunger from training. It's very normal. And that's something that I experienced when I went through the 20 whatever weeks it was, 22 weeks or something, where I couldn't really train. And I just wasn't very hungry most of the time. Even when I I wasn't tracking most of the time, but occasionally I'd come back and track just to see what it looked like and be like, wow, my calories are really low for compared to what I normally eat. Now, granted, my energy demands weren't as much, not being able to train, but I just wasn't hungry at all. To start increasing training again, and yeah, hunger does start to pick up. But keep in mind too, if you're training, you also have more energy demand, and therefore you get more food. So it's kind of whatever you want to call it. But as long as you are eating more protein and eating more filling foods, that will certainly help. Drink plenty of water. And it's kind of a slippery slope to not train and do something that's so beneficial because you're concerned about hunger. I get it. And you definitely don't want to go into binging territory, but this is where you go, okay, and this kind of comes back to what I was just saying about if you're going to overeat, do it through protein. And it's a good way to check yourself on hunger too. So a lot of times we can be hungry and then go, okay, I could safely eat a bunch of egg whites or whatever, and it would help me. It'll fill me up, and I probably won't gain any additional body fat from it, or at least it'll be very minimal. But I don't want that. I don't want egg whites. I want donuts and ice cream and cake and pizza, and you know what I mean? So if you say you're hungry, but you're not willing to eat protein, you just want to eat some junk, then you need to question if it's hunger or if it's just a craving to eat some junk food, because they are different. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just a good way to kind of check yourself and say, okay, is it hunger or is it something else? And a lot of times we feel hunger because of other things like, stress and emotions and boredom and whatever else, right? There's a lot of reasons we tend to feel hungry, but it doesn't mean it's always hunger. Even just being thirsty. Sometimes being thirsty is confused with hunger. And so yeah, there's definitely a difference between eating more and binging and utilizing the right foods to help with hunger. It's funny when we want to eat more when we're hungry and we binge, we eat these things that are just not filling at all, and it doesn't even help our hunger. But we avoid the things that do help with hunger, and this is where the emotions play a large role in things. And this is why I'm always talking all the time about the mental, emotional sides of things is so important. It's every bit as important, if not more important, than the physical, because without the mental, the physical ain't gonna happen. So if nothing else, just ease into it. Start with 1 or 2 days per week and, see how it goes and go from there. One thing you don't want to do is just not do it because you're scared. And that goes for almost anything. It's like you can always get into it and then If it's not for you, then stop it. It's kind of like the old argument. Well, I don't want to get too bulky, right? Like I don't want to build too much muscle. Which any of us who have done this for any amount of time know that that's just not going to happen accidentally. Like you're not just going to like start lifting weights and then all of a sudden, boom, you're huge. If only for those of us who do like muscle, that would be very nice. It doesn't work that way. But even if it did, like even if you could build muscle crazy fast and you didn't like that look, well, you could just stop training and you're going to lose the muscle, right? Like you have to continue to train or you lose it. That's just how it works. So not doing it because you're worried that might happen just doesn't make sense, because if it does happen, you can just stop training and you'll lose the muscle. But I think a lot of people think, well, if you train, then you build muscle and it's just there forever. And that just isn't how it works. And a lot of people try to do that. I have people that keep coming back over and over going, well, what if I train this way and then stop? Will I hold it? No, you have to keep use it or lose it. What if I do this? Will I be able to keep it then? No. If you stop training in time, it will go away. It doesn't go away right away. It takes time, but it will go away. So that was a little side rant. All right. How do you decide when you lean out versus when to bulk? Also, do you prefer lean gaining than bulking with a big surplus? Well, there's a lot of ways to look at this. So, I mean, it really depends on your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, what's most important to you. But an easy way to look at it would be if you're leaning out and you get to a point where you can't realistically make any more adjustments, like, okay, let's say you've plateaued and you can't see any more results. That means you need to make some adjustments. You need to lower calories, increase your energy expenditure, and make those changes to get things going. If you either can't realistically do that, if your calories are too low or cardio is too high or whatever, and you can't make any more changes or just be too much, okay, well, time to reverse out. Or even if you do keep making changes, but your body is just fighting you too much and it's just not there, okay, it's time to reverse. Or if you're happy with where you're at, body comp wise, and you just want some different goals, stop and change directions. As far as lean gaining versus bulking with a big surplus, definitely lean gaining. You don't need a large surplus to build muscle, and going into a large surplus is not going to help you build muscle better. It's only going to help store more body fat that you'll eventually have to take on down the road. So you only need a couple hundred calorie surplus to optimally build. I usually recommend around 0.2 to 0.5% on average of an increase per week if you're in a lean bulking phase. And that's going to be enough to make sure you're in a surplus and optimally build, but not build so much or not be in such a surplus that you're just building or storing unnecessary body fat. So yeah, I just don't see any value in that unless you're someone who's just really thin and really wants to bulk up big time and don't mind extra body fat. Then yeah, get after it. But for most people, I would typically recommend more of a lean gaining strategy. But it always depends. There's so many different ways to do it. All right. If I get 1 gram of protein every day, but only eat at 1,200 to 1,400 calorie diet, will I lose fat and maintain muscle still? So I'm assuming you mean 1 gram per pound of protein. I'm assuming is what you're saying. And then if you only eat 1,200 to 1,400 calories, will you lose fat and maintain muscle? It really comes down to what is too big of a deficit for you. So to make sure you're maintaining muscle, you want to lose no more than 1% of your body weight on average per week. Once you start going over that, you're starting to jeopardize losing muscle much more, especially the more aggressive you are. The bigger the deficit is, the more likely you are to lose muscle. I've seen some stats before. I don't know how true it is, but I believe, when Lane Norton was talking about this once, he was pointing to some data, and he was saying somewhere along the lines of like if you keep it under a 1% loss, it's more like 80 to 90% body fat, maybe 10 to 20% lean body mass in a deficit. So you're going to lose some almost no matter what. It's just you're just trying to minimize that as much as possible. But in large extreme diets where you're losing a lot of weight quickly, it becomes more like 50-50 or even greater than that, more you actually lose more muscle than body fat if you go into extreme deficits. So this is also just one more reason why we got to be patient, slow down, not try to lose too fast, because you don't want to lose muscle. It's works very much against you. Even if you don't care about having a very muscular look, it still wreaks havoc on metabolism. It's just not a good thing to do. So I can't say specifically what calorie amount that will be for you. You just want to be in a calorie deficit that will keep you under that kind of like 0.5 to 1% per week on average. So like some weeks you lose some more, some weeks you lose less. We're talking about an average over time. Like if you go 1 week over 1%, it's not like you just lost all your muscle, especially in the short term, especially in the early stages of a cutting phase. Losing more, there's going to be more water weight and stuff like that. You're not going to lose muscle right away. But if you do it for a long time at a large deficit, you're really going to be sacrificing more muscle then. All right. Thank you. What do you believe is the most optimal way of preserving a strong metabolism while cutting for 10 weeks, 5 days deficit, 2 days maintenance, or 3 weeks deficit, 1 week maintain, repeat? I would, if you're looking for the most optimal way to preserve metabolism and muscle and everything else, then the 2 week on, 2 week off approach that was used in the initial diet break study showed much more muscle mass retention, much less slowdowns in metabolism and things like that. But it does make it take longer. So it kind of depends on time frame and what you want to do and things like that. There's no data between 5 days. So between 5 days of deficit and 2 days of maintenance, so a double refeed approach versus 3 weeks in one, there's no data on this. So I can't say for sure one is better than the other. Now, the one study they did with the 3 weeks of deficit and 1 week of maintenance didn't seem to show much improvement in metabolism versus people who didn't take a break. Again, that was just one study, and it was in leaner individuals. In that initial study, the 2 week 2 on was on obese people. So there's a lot of different factors that could go into play, and it's really the only two we have. So we don't know a whole lot at this point. But I typically put almost everybody who is good at sticking to their macros on a daily basis on a 5 day deficit, 2 week maintenance, and then still occasionally do full week diet breaks, 2 weeks, even if we can, even if it means a greater deficit for the 5 days to equate total calories. I just find that seems to work a bit better. And I definitely have found that 2 weeks of diet break tends to work better when they come back to diet again than just 1 week, which kind of goes in line with what that initial study said. So I can't say which one's better. I would just say no matter what, if one strategy is more, what's the word I'm looking for? Sustainable for you, if it's something, if it's easier for you to stick to one strategy versus the other, I don't think either one is going to make a significant difference in either direction. So if you prefer 3 weeks straight deficit and then a week of maintenance, then great, that's fine. If you prefer 5 and 2 without really taking 1 week, I would still occasionally take a break. And I'm not necessarily even a great fan of planning it out in advance, your diet breaks. I'm much more apt to just say, okay, let's just see how things are going, see how you're feeling, and then take breaks as needed. If the person is good at that. For some people, they need more structure. They thrive on knowing exactly what we're going to do. And if you're someone like that who likes to plan a lot more and needs to do that, and that helps you stick to the plan, then great. But if you cannot do that and you can just go, okay, I'm losing well, I'm feeling good, I have plenty of energy, I'm sleeping well, I'm not overly hungry, everything's going great. Why throw a diet break into that mix? You know what I mean? Like, just keep it going then. I still would take a break every maybe 6 to 8 weeks, even if things are going well most of the time. Again, there's a lot of different variables here, especially considering how much someone has to lose. But I like that strategy more, at least from a coaching perspective. I feel like I can do a lot more with that. And I just personally prefer that, but everyone has their own preferences, and there's no one way that's best for everybody. And we always have to remember that. So hopefully that helped, even though I didn't necessarily answer it. All right, 1 second. All right, as long as protein is equated, do you think calories in, calories out is just as good, effective as counting and tracking macros? not sure I understand. As long as protein is equated, do you think the calories in versus calories out is just as good effective as counting? So calories in, calories out. This is confused a lot. People look at calories in versus calories out as tracking macros, counting calories. That's not what calories in versus calories out is. It's a tool to help with knowing what it is, but the calories in is simply what I was kind of talking about before. So calories in is the calories in, no matter what type of food it is. It doesn't matter. It's all the same going in. And then there's the thermic effect of food of it going out. There's the thermic effect of exercise for calories out. There's the thermic effect of just your general movements throughout the day. It's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So your general movements throughout the day, which makes a much bigger difference than most people think. And then there's just your basal metabolic rate is also what contributes to calories out as well, which is just kind of how many calories your body burns at rest doing absolutely nothing, just kind of keeping the lights on, so to speak. That's a large percentage, the biggest percentage of your calories out in a daily basis. So you don't have to count calories for calories in versus calories out to be a thing. And so a lot of people will like point to hormones and say, well, it's not calories, it's hormones. Well, no. Hormones are a player, but the reason they're a player is because if your hormones are all jacked up, you're going to burn less calories. You get less calories out. The hormones dictate how many not dictate. Your hormones contribute to how many calories are how many calories you're burning throughout all those different things: the thermic effect, exercise, food, BMR, things like that. So it's a contributor, but it's not the only. It still is calories in versus calories out. So hopefully that kind of clears that up a little bit. I'm guessing, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, that what you mean by this is as long as calories are equated and protein is equated, doesn't matter if you do more carbs or more fat. If that's what you mean, then for the most part, no, it doesn't matter. And 1 second here, I'm going to pull up a study. I'm going to try to do this again anyway. This one I know I have saved. The question is where? Oh, come on. I think the problem is I'm trying to do it too fast. Here we go. Okay, let me make this bigger. And let me hide. How do I hide it? And let me hide that too. Sorry. Getting used to this. Okay. So this study was done over a 12-month period. 12 months, and they had people either do a higher fat or higher carb diet, or I should say lower fat or lower carb diet, protein and calories equated. And well, I shouldn't say that. That's a different study. But anyways, this one was lower fat versus lower carb. What showed better fat loss? And there was no difference. I mean, this was 12 weeks, and it was how many people? It was a lot. 609 people, aged 18 to 50. So large age range. They had BMI between 28 and 40. So there was a large fluctuation in people in different sizes. It was for a long period of time. So really good study in my mind. And in over the 12 months, that's a long time, a very long time. Obviously, the food wasn't completely controlled. It couldn't be for that long of a period of time. But in general, it's okay. These people were supposed to eat lower fat. The other people were supposed to eat lower carb. And there was no difference. It showed the same. And there's plenty of different research that does support whenever you control calories and protein, whether you prefer one or the other doesn't really seem to matter a whole lot. So it kind of comes down to preference. If you prefer one over the other, then that's fine. If you find that you stick to the program better doing one or the other, that's fine. And I do have a number of people who do that, where I just give them a calorie target and a protein target and say whatever you want. It depends too on the phase. So let me go back to comments. So In a reverse diet or a building phase, when calories are nice and high, your macro split makes much less of a difference because you're going to have a sufficient amount of carbs and fats pretty much no matter what. When you're eating a ton of food, you're going to have plenty of carbs for energy. You're going to have plenty of fat for hormones and digestion and everything else. So it doesn't really matter as much. So this is a good time to be a bit more flexible with your plan. The lower calories get in a cutting phase, especially towards the later stages when calories are getting lower and lower. This is when there's more benefit to being more specific with macros because you want to make sure you have a sufficient amount of carbs to make sure you can perform okay and have energy. You want to make sure you have enough fat, again, for hormones, digestion, nutrient uptake, etc. And it can be a little bit more helpful. But no matter what, as long as you're equating calories and protein, for the most part, results will be the same. But keep in mind too, there's individuality here. Some people respond better to other protocols. So like even in studies where they show that the average, it didn't matter whether you're higher fat or higher carb, and there's going to be little dot lines on it. I don't know if that's probably not going to be on this one. I'm not seeing it. But even if you're going to look deeper into the charts of any of these studies, so if the middle of the chart was it didn't matter either way how they responded. And then this side was they did better on carbs. This side was better on fat. The majority of people are going to be in here, but then there's going to be a couple of outliers, couple little dots way to the extreme, where one person did way better on more carbs, one person did way better on more fat. This is why we can't just make blanket statements either. I mean, we can take averages, but we are individuals. We aren't averages. So there's preferences. There's paying attention to how your body responds, and things like sustainability and all that. Also, this is probably in relation to the question up here of 12 to 1400. It's still pretty low calorie for you, but low calories is individual, and it just comes down to again, your pace of weight loss is the biggest indicator. So if you want to keep muscle, pace of weight loss under 1%, sufficient protein, and a third thing, a good training stimulus. If you're not really training and you're just losing weight, you're much more likely to lose muscle too. Glad you're loving it. I liked it too. I watched it on other live streams. I'm like, man, how are they doing that? I really like that a lot. And I wanted to make it a part of mine, and glad I found something. Yeah, so very welcome, man. Thank you. Yeah, you're going to want to shoot for 1 to 1.5. 2 pounds would be a bit over that 1%. So 1% would be 1.55 pounds. Again, you can go over some weeks. It's not like if you lose 2 pounds in 1 week, then all is lost. But you do want to keep the pace slower, especially if you're concerned about losing muscle, for sure. Love it. All right, a couple more here, but definitely let me know any questions you have, and I'll handle anything before I leave. I'll stay here as long as necessary. All right, you recommend a diet break every 6 to 8 weeks. How long of a diet break would you recommend for someone who cannot work out and still has 60 pounds to lose? It wouldn't really change. I still would. I typically like to take 2 weeks when I can. I find so much, like over and over again, in my own data. I'm not going off. Well, I am kind of going off of research too, because like I said, the 2 week on, 2 week off showed better minimization of metabolic adaptation than the 3 on 1 off. Again, there was a lot of variances between those two studies, a lot of significant variances. So it's hard to necessarily extrapolate and say it's apples to apples, but there was data that suggested 2 weeks might be better than 1. And I've just found through working with clients that people who take 2 week diet breaks, when they come back, especially if you're taking a break and then make an adjustment from the previous macros, it seems to work really well. And that's my favorite, like, plateau buster, so to speak. That is staying on the same macros, right? You don't want to be jumping all over the place, but staying on the same macros. And then as weight loss starts to slow down and you start to hit plateaus, not necessarily just because you have 1 week of not losing weight that you hit a plateau. No, I mean, give it a couple weeks and make sure you're also not seeing changes in body composition and measurements and things like that. You got to be paying attention to that stuff. Or if you're noticing that your clothes are fitting looser, you're still seeing some progress. So don't get just wrapped up in just the scale. But if you're truly plateaued and have been for at least a couple of weeks, my favorite way to bust through that is take a 2-week diet break and then come back and then make the adjustment down from the previous macros that you were on before the diet break. And that really gets things going. I mean, that works so well most of the time versus what we used to do more frequently before we knew more about diet breaks and stuff. And that was just, okay, you've hit a plateau. Now it's time to drop calories and or increase cardio and get things moving, which usually that's going to happen, but it just doesn't work nearly as well as taking that break first. It makes a huge difference. And it's something that I highly recommend. So in terms of your question of where did we go here? How did I lose you? There we go. So in terms of your question, because you can't work out and still have a lot of weight to lose, I would still recommend it, but it just kind of depends. It depends again. How well are you losing? How good are you feeling? Like you can go longer. You can go longer than if you're seeing great results and you're feeling good and everything's going great and you want to keep going and it's already been 8 weeks, but everything's going great and you want to keep going. Like I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that I do think there's benefit in taking breaks anyways. But then at that point, if you're still seeing results and then you're taking a diet break, instead of making the adjustment down, you're just going to come right back to doing what you were doing before. And that should in theory get things working again, but I mean, again, you just never really know for sure. Everything's unique to the individual and the circumstance, and a lot of times too, like adherence isn't necessarily as good, so we have to factor that in. There's a lot of different factors we have to put into play, but and keep in mind too, like no matter what, for most people, you're not going to lose all the weight that you want to in one fat loss attempt. And I know that probably sounds kind of negative. I don't mean it negatively. I'm just trying to be open and honest. And it's a good thing to accept. A big reason why a lot of people get trapped and struggle to lose the weight they want to lose and retain it is because they get so caught up in, I've got to get all the way there now. I've got to get there now. And if I can't, then what's the point? And then they just go off and end up overeating on a slow metabolism because they've done all that dieting and then they gain the weight back rapidly. Their metabolism hasn't had a chance to catch up and improve the way it should through a normal reverse diet. They come back, they panic now, and then come back and diet again. Body doesn't respond as well because their metabolism is still in the toilet. And it gets harder and harder and harder every passing attempt. And you just go backwards and backwards and backwards. So it's understand and accept that you might not lose the 60 pounds you want to all at once. So because if you're thinking about, okay, if I'm taking diet breaks and have to lose all this weight, it's going to be, months and months and months and months, if not years, before all the weight's gone. Don't get caught up in that. Just go as long as you can. Keep making changes as your body adapts. Once you get to a point where you're over dieting, you just don't want to do it anymore. You're mentally over it, or you can't see results anymore, and it's just not realistic just as a plan. That's fine. That's normal. That's going to happen. But now you reverse diet out, right? Minimize the weight gain, being okay with weight gaining some, but then down the road you can come back and then diet again and get more of the weight off. And this is how you get where you want to be over time versus I got to get all the way there. And if I don't, then screw it. What's the point? We need to have that patience. And even if you think about it as, even if you were to gain like 10 pounds back and lose 25 at a time, like I'm not saying that it'll work exactly this way, but if you lose 25 and then gain 10 back, but then lose 25 and then gain 10 back and then lose 25, you see how over time you get down to where you want to be. I'm not saying these are numbers you should expect by any stretch of the imagination, and you might not even gain that much back. You might lose a lot more. Who knows? But the point is, don't get caught up in it. Don't get caught up in the short term and trying to rush the process. And it's so critical to stay patient and think big picture. And remember that you have your whole life ahead of you. This has to be a lifestyle. There's no such thing as done. And we've got to always have that patience. It's one of the most underrated aspects of this lifestyle is having that patience and not getting wrapped up in the results, and separate emotions from results and just focus on the process and enjoying it. So you got some bonus advice. Yes, this is a video I'll probably be doing at some point. I have a title picked out that I want to do, something around like walk your way to under 10% body fat or something like that. You can absolutely walk to abs. If I flex them, I see them, but I have lower back issues, so no more core exercises are an issue for me. Well, first of all, okay, I'm not a physical therapist, so this is not a therapist advice. This is not medical advice. However, I know a common reason for lower back issues is oftentimes that your lower back has to do more work than it should because of weak core, weak abs, and things like that. So this is very common in power lifters. And this is something that I've struggled with in the past, because you're doing a bunch of squatting, a bunch of deadlifting, a lot of pressure on the lower back, but you never do any like planks or side planks or any core stabilization movements. And because the front of your body is weaker than the back side of your body, now your lower back's taking on so much more than it should, and it's sore all the time, and you're always hurting it, and you're always straining it and stuff because it's just doing too much. So a lot of times people actually will fix their lower back issues by strengthening their core, not avoiding it. Now, I'm not saying this is what you should do. You should see a physical therapist, and you should have them put you through range of motion tests and all that type of stuff to get a determination of why you're having these lower back issues, and then do what they say. But I'm just saying that could be a case. I don't know. There's not enough I know about you, and it's all online. And again, I'm not a physical therapist. But to the initial question, yeah, walking is great. Walking is so underrated for helping with fat loss. So many people, and I used to think this years ago myself, like if it's not like intense cardio, it doesn't count and it doesn't help. No, walking, it takes more time is the main drawback to it, but it burns calories and it's easy to recover from. It doesn't wear you down so much. Like HIIT cardio just runs you into the ground. And then you top that on top of hardcore training and lower calories. It can be very hard to come back from that and recover. And that can do more harm than good. So a lot of extra walking can do a lot for helping lose body fat, which is how you see abs. So contrary to popular belief, training your abs isn't what makes your abs show. Now, of course, a more developed abdominal area will show better, but it's not like it burns body fat from the stomach. It doesn't work that way. That's awesome, man. Thank you. That's too funny. Well, I mean, if you ever do it, by the way, I should throw this out here. My Instagram. Sometimes people will jump on my Instagram and send me a DM and ask me personal questions that they don't want to have commented on the channel. I have no problem with that, and I'll answer your questions on there if you ever have them. And this might sound a little selfish, but if you follow me, okay? Like, I'm getting more and more of these questions now, which is fine. Like, I love helping people. But to me, it's like, if you're going to slide into my DMs and you want me to personally answer your questions for free, the least you can do is follow me first, right? Like, I think that's only fair. So if I get a question and they're not even following me at this point, since I'm getting a lot of them now, I just delete them and move on to the people who do. So if you want questions answered, follow my Instagram, shoot me a DM, and I promise I will get back to you. Plus, growing Instagram is freaking hard. Even harder than YouTube, which is also extremely hard. Let's see. All right, one more, unless some more come in. Thoughts on body recompositioning. Can most people recomp, especially if they're well-trained individuals, or is it mostly newbies? It's mostly newbies. There's basically 3 conditions that make it so it's likely to recomp. And if you don't know what recomp is where your weight stays around the same, but you look better, right? You have less body fat and more muscle mass. So the extra muscle is weight, the fat lost is weight. The weight stays the same, but you look better. This is very common in people who are new to training, because the training response is so powerful. And it's something that I've been trying to show through my journey on Instagram. Again, follow me on Instagram, Colin Dway. And, I took all that time off. I was forced to have all that time off, 20 some weeks. now that I'm back into things, within just a few weeks, I had lost like 3/8 of an inch off my waist while gaining like 2.5 pounds or something like that. So my weight's going up, but my body fat is coming down because your waist circumference, which is around the belly button, that's all basically all body fat. So the training is so underrated and so helpful. Especially if you're going into reverse. I've seen that happen a lot too, where people didn't really train before, their metabolism is trashed from yo-yo dieting. Get them into a good strength training routine, have them increase their calories, and their weight will go up, but their body composition will improve. I just had someone recently last week who checked in kind of feeling depressed and kind of freaking out that their weight was up. We're trying to do a full year with this person, and she's actually done really well. She's only gained like 3 or 4 pounds over like, I think it's been like 25 or 30 weeks or something like that, which is not normal. Most people don't respond that well. And she wasn't completely new to training, but we've optimized her training. And she was feeling really bummed about the recent weight gain. And I went and took her pictures. I took her pictures from the start to now, compared them, and she's clearly visibly leaner. Like, she looks better now than she did to start, even though she's like 3 or 4 pounds up. And man, boy, did that change the mindset instantly, right? Like, seeing that, we get so caught up in that number, but that number isn't what really matters. Now I went on a side tangent there. The 3 conditions where people are more likely to see recomp: 1, again, completely new to strength training, or also going from a suboptimal macro split to a more optimal macro split, meaning like a lot of people eat very low protein diets, so like literally like 40 grams a day or whatever, and then you get them up to like 1 gram per pound, and now boom, they're starting to build the muscle that they couldn't because they weren't getting enough protein before. That can make a difference too. The second is if you took a long layoff, like myself, for instance, the reference that I made, a long layoff, so you've lost some muscle, but you have like satellite cells and nuclei that remain in the body and make it easier to build the muscle back. It comes back way faster. If you're ever going to lose muscle because of time off, don't freak out about it, because when you get back into it, it's going to come back like that. It comes back so much faster than the initial time you build it. So if you have a long layoff and then come back to training, you can recomp. And then the third would be if you got on steroids, which obviously not something I recommend. I mean, everybody's free to do what they want with their own body. I'm a natural athlete and always will be. I have no desire to get onto steroids, but that would be a scenario where you could certainly build muscle and lose fat at the same time. And it makes a big difference. Like, sometimes people will argue that, well, you still have to train hard to get the results of steroids and build a bunch of muscle, which to be a best of the best bodybuilder, like, yeah, absolutely. But you can build a lot of muscle from steroids. There was actually a study done where they had people who were untrained. They didn't train at all. Right. And then they had people who were who trained naturally. And then they had people who trained on steroids. And then they had people who didn't train who were on steroids. The people who took steroids and didn't even strength train gained more muscle than the group who trained naturally. You want to talk about unfair? So I mean, I can get the thought process or the desire around it, but that's just not for me. And if somebody wants to do it and they want to take the risks, by all means do it. And again, I know I'm going on a side rant here, but those are the scenarios. If you've been training well, if you haven't taken breaks away, if your nutrition has been optimal, and we're not changing anything else, then the chances of any type of recomp is very, very, very low in my mind. Ooh, I'm gonna turn my AC down. I'm dying here. If you don't have the Ecobee app, I highly recommend it. It's so awesome. You can just change your AC from wherever you are with your phone. I love it. We had this put in last year. Okay. Hey, Coach, thank you for all the wonderful content. Thank you. Will 1 to 3 weeks of sedentary, no lifting lifestyle when on a cut with deficit calories still interfere with my progress post-reverse diet? I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. Will 1 to 3 weeks of sedentary, no lifting lifestyle when on a cut with deficit calories still interfere with my progress post-reverse diet? So I think what you're asking is, if you were to stop exercising for 1 to 3 weeks and still on a cut, could you still lose fat? Yes, you could. you're not going to expend as many calories now. So to see the same progress, you're probably going to have to reduce your carbs by maybe 15, 20%, or your calories through carbs and fat. I typically, if there's going to be a change in expenditure and someone's tracking macros, I usually go through carbs just because that's what's used for performance as your main energy source. And you're not using that now, whereas fat is used for things besides that. It's used for other things, like I said before, hormones and digestion and stuff. But you'll have to make that adjustment to see the same progress. Again, now without the training, you're more likely to lose more lean body mass, but 1 to 3 weeks, especially just 1 week, isn't going to make any significant difference. Muscle is very resilient. It's hard to lose. And it should, when you do come back, even if you were to lose anything, which you probably wouldn't, it will come back quicker. But no, like if you're worried about like all of the progress that's going to be lost and you're screwed, like no, absolutely not. You'll be fine. But it might be a good opportunity. Like if you're not going to be able to exercise, maybe that's a good time for a diet break, and then when you can come back, go after it again. You just would probably want to increase your calories a little bit less than you normally would, just because you're going to be expending less calories. And again, it always just depends, like, okay, what do you want more? Do you want to maintain the best you can, or do you want a little bit more food? Thank you, appreciate it. Any fitness tips for students who are busy prepping for exams? Just get in and do what you can. Even just the smallest amount is so helpful. So many people fall into this kind of all or nothing mindset. And, if I can't, optimally work out, if I can't get my 5 days in or whatever it might be, then there's no point in doing any. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And that was also documented in my journey because I could do just a little bit of training. It was very, very light, very easy, nowhere near failure, but I could at least show up and do something, except for every 2 weeks. Or 2 weeks, every handful of weeks. I don't want to get into all that detail again, but just by being able to show up and do anything, even just quick, light, easy workouts, I maintained so much more of my lean body mass that I would have lost otherwise. So it makes a big difference, and it'll at least keep you steady. There was a research done that showed that subjects who went over a half a year only doing 1/9 of their normal training volume didn't lose any muscle, like 1/9. So it really goes to show showing up and doing anything is enough to keep it. It's much easier to maintain muscle than it is to build muscle. So just because you're not progressing doesn't mean there's no point. But get in, do what you can. Even if you can just get in for 2 days a week, 2 full body workouts, whatever you can do. You can do more like supersetting and stuff to bring the time in the gym down. Supersetting is you go from one movement to the next movement with no rest, usually opposing muscle groups like chest and back or biceps and triceps or whatever else. It doesn't have to be, but that's the more common way to do it. So that cuts down on time. You won't be able to do as much volume because you'll be less rested and you won't be able to do as much weight, but it's a way to cut down on time. So that's a way to do it as well. And then schedule your workouts in. Unscheduled time has a tendency to just go away and we don't even know what happens to it. So you want to schedule your workouts in, and this goes for anybody who's busy, who's not busy, right? But schedule it into your week. Like literally go into the week and say, okay, on Monday from 5 to 6, I'm going to go to the gym. From Thursday, from whatever, plug it into your planner, your calendar, whatever it is, like any other important business meeting or class you have to go to or whatever it might be. Schedule it in and block off that time and say, this is for workouts. Nothing gets to interfere with this. No, make it optional. All right. If we make things optional, we take the option whenever it's not optimal. Optimal. So that's another good strategy as well. And then if you do have to shuffle things around, shuffle it around, but commit to whatever you can do, commit to that time and make it happen. Though it's very dangerous to look at this fitness stuff that we do as optional, because like I said, whenever you do, you're going to take it. If it doesn't all line up perfectly, you're going to take the option out. So eventually it gets to the point where it's kind of like, it's just a routine. It's part of your day. It's like, okay, it's time to go to the gym. Like I'm at the point now where I don't even think about, okay, like, should I go to the gym or not? No, it's like, okay, it's 2:30 and I'm going to the gym now. You know what I mean? Like it's like brushing your teeth or anything else. This is part of your day, part of your routine. And you make it non-negotiable. Does that mean you can't ever miss a session? No, of course not. But anyway, hopefully that helps. Ooh, where are we going here? So getting more comments. Good. been on diet for 25 weeks. I went from 205 to 155. Wow, man. And now for the past month, I purchased a bench press and dumbbells to work out on the regular. Let me go down to the next one. However, I've been on maintenance since I started lifting this past month. When I start to cut again, can I maintain all my muscle because I'm a beginner getting 1 gram of protein, or is it possible to burn 100% of fat? No, you will maintain your muscle, and you'll probably even burn muscle. You'll maintain muscle and probably even build muscle. Honestly, when you're completely new, that training response is powerful. Like, it's awesome. Like everyone should be training. Like, unless you just absolutely hate it and it makes you want to blow your brains out, then okay, find something else to be active. But even then, like, man, can you do like 1 day a week at least, like just to get the benefit? I don't know. I mean, everyone's different. But yeah, no, you're good, man. And congrats on your weight loss. Whether it was too fast or not is still awesome. You could still reverse diet out and keep most of your results. And you're learning, you're growing, you're doing better. And that's all we ever do. Like, we all make mistakes. We all do things in suboptimal ways. Every one of us changes over time. I was very much a clean eater and a bro and all that stuff early on. You just learn. You learn and grow and get better. And that's why I don't like, well, I need to learn everything first and then start. Like, that's never going to happen. You learn from your mistakes and from your failures and stuff, but you just keep going. Let me see. Do you consider doctor prescribed HRT, TRT juicing? No, because if it was doctor prescribed, I didn't read the rest of it. I probably should have. Let me hold on. Is there ever a time where you feel it's okay to take it if your body no longer makes those hormones? That's between you and your doctor. Like, I'm never going to step in and say that you should or shouldn't. And even with like regular recreational, it's like, it's not up to me. It's up to the person. But if your doctor thinks you should be on it, you should be on it. And there's a lot of, like, if you have low testosterone, like naturally you have low testosterone, you're well underneath that normal range. There's a lot of negative side effects to that physically. And even probably mentally. So getting into a more normal range, you're not getting into super physiological levels. You're just getting into normal levels. You know what I mean? So that's a totally different scenario, in my personal opinion. Now, if you're a competitor and they asked you if you're on TRT and they're doing lie detector tests, then you're going to have to say yes, and you might get disqualified. But it's kind of like semantics, I guess I would say. All right. Ooh, they're piling in now. I currently strength train 3 times per week, a boot camp class 3 times per week, and I'm reverse dieting. Should I cut some of the activity back? I will have to do even more than this when I cut. I would not cut your strength training. Strength training doesn't change whether you're building or cutting. It shouldn't, at least in my opinion. Again, another common mistake people make is like, well, what you do when you're not dieting makes much more of a difference for your overall long-term results in body composition than what you do when you're dieting. This is not something many people understand, but this is when you build the muscle. This is when you build your metabolism. This is when you set the foundation and make the big changes. It can be demotivating because you're not seeing the changes happening, and you're probably actually seeing it kind of go backwards a little bit in the short term, but it's what's going to set you up to see incredible results down the road. So if you only dial it up every single time you go into a cut, that's you're doing yourself a disservice. And I'm not saying this to you specifically, I'm just saying in general. Now, the boot camp classes, that might be a good thing to dial back a bit, just because it's more cardio based. And you're right, like whatever you're doing now will be like the baseline for when you start your cut down the road. So like I said, strength training kind of stays the same for the most part, whether you're cutting or building, but then you change your activity levels through more cardio type of activity to either get out of or create more of a calorie deficit. So if your body's used to getting 3 hours of cardio a week when you start your cut, well, that's now your baseline, and you have to go above and beyond that to create more of a deficit. Whereas if you're only on like an hour of cardio per week, I do recommend at least like 30 to 60 minutes of cardio for everybody at any point, just for the general health benefits and things like that, work capacity in the gym, etc. But then now your baseline is much lower, and you have more room to make adjustments. Just kind of like, so you want to be able to eat as many calories and do as little cardio as possible while seeing results, so you can keep making adjustments as your body does hit the inevitable plateaus. People get so upset and frustrated by plateaus, but it's just part of the process. Like, they're unavoidable for the most part. And it's just your body doing its job, adapting. So we just recognize that and make adjustments when it happens and keep moving forward. But yeah, it might not be a bad idea to cut back on some of the boot camp classes. You don't have to, or we all have to determine our own balance and what we want to do. And it also depends on what, what your goals are and everything else and what you want to do. It is an option. Or if maybe you wanted maybe dial it up to 4 days of strength training and bring your boot camp classes down, that might be an option as well. Or you maybe do 1 day of boot camp and 4 days of training or whatever. Like there's no right or wrong. These are just options. Is there a calorie amount that the metabolism could not adapt to? No. Lower your calories, your body adapts to that. Increase your calories, your body adapts to that. Your metabolism is adaptive. I lost weight in an unhealthy way. I ate 400 calories for 4.5 months, lost 63 pounds, 5'9" at 120 pounds. Is it possible to slowly increase calories by 20 to 50 and get to 2,200 plus? Is it the slower that I think that's a typo. Oh, increase. Okay. As the slower I increase, the higher calories get. Potentially. So, I mean, your reverse dieting doesn't make your metabolism faster than it should be genetically, outside of the muscle built through that, because that's how you do. The only way to actually increase your metabolism past its baseline genetic potential is by increasing lean body mass. But what it does is it takes away the suppression that was in it from the dieting. So if your normal genetic potential is 2,200 calories, then sure, you can get there. It might not be. That's pretty high for most females. I don't know if you're a female or not, I guess. I think you are. But it doesn't matter. Like some females can only get up to like 15, 16, 1,700. Other people can get up to like 3,000. Like there's so many variables. And again, low calories is specific to the individual. But to answer your question the best I can, the slower you increase the calories, the less likely you are to increase body fat, but also the longer it's going to take. So there's always trade-off in whatever we do. But I can't say how high your calories can get without gaining a crap load of weight anyway, because there's too much I don't know. But yeah, the slower you take it, the less likely you are to gain. And hopefully that answers your question. You recommend exercising with less sleep, always prioritizing sleep first. Sleep is very, very important and very underrated. It makes a huge difference across the board, physiologically, mentally, everything. And if you're not sleeping enough, you're not going to recover the way you should. And if you're under recovering, that can really hamper your results significantly. I don't know how to answer your question exactly. You recommend exercising with less sleep. I mean, if you mean, should you still go in and train even though you didn't sleep as much? I would say yes, but I would also try your best to prioritize sleep as much as you can, no matter what. Now, if you're completely running to the ground and you've been over exercising and you're not taking deloads and you've been training yourself into the ground, then okay, you might want to take some time off and prioritize sleep first. But as a whole, like, okay, if the question is, oh, last night I didn't sleep very well, I only got a few hours of sleep, should I still go exercise? Yeah, I still would. You don't have to. And again, missing 1 day is never going to make or break anything. And if you need a day off, that's fine. You just don't want to turn it into a habit. What are your thoughts on lifting even with sore muscles after 1 to 2 days rest? Do it. Here's the best way I can explain it. I need some coffee first. I should have made more. So the body has something in it called the repeated bout effect. And the repeated bout effect basically states that the body becomes more adept at repairing and recovering itself from the given stimulus. So the best way to explain this would be, think about somebody who has a desk job, right? Like somebody who's sedentary, they don't exercise, they sit in front of a computer all day at work, they come home, they sit on their couch, they basically do nothing, right? Now let's say they quit that job and they get a job in construction, right? So they show up the first day, they're doing all this heavy labor and they're not used to it. They come home, they're exhausted, they wake up the next morning and they're sore because their body wasn't used to it. well, they can't call into work sore, right? You got to go to work. So they go in the next day and they do the same thing. Tired, sore, having a really hard time, but they got to do it. They got to show up to work. And the next day, even sore probably, but they keep going back. And in time, pretty soon the body no longer is sore because it gets used to what you're doing. That's the repeated bout effect. Same thing goes with training. This whole only do one muscle group or only lift a muscle group once per week thing is actually suboptimal and doesn't make any sense. It's to avoid overtraining, but very, very few people outside of like Olympic athletes who are like doing just intense, crazy training aren't going to have to worry about overtraining. Overreaching, maybe that's a different thing, and you want to make sure you're recovering with deloads and stuff. But the one time per week thing doesn't make sense. And actually, there's quite a bit of research that shows even when training volume is the same, so volume is weight times sets times reps, even when volume is the same for the week, when they do it more times per week than less, so 2 instead of 1, or sometimes even 3 instead of 2, the people who did or 3 instead of 1, excuse me, the people who did more times per week with the same volume saw better muscle gain than the people who did it once per week. And this is probably because you stimulate muscle protein synthesis more than once. So when you train, you increase muscle protein synthesis in the muscles that you trained for probably 24 to 48 hours or so. So if you only train, like say you train your legs once per week, now you have increased muscle protein synthesis. I can never say that word, in your legs for 2 days, but then you've got 5 days with no increase in muscle protein synthesis. Whereas if you even equate the same volume, but you do it 1 day and then do it again 3 days later, now you're spiking muscle protein synthesis twice per week and see better results because of it. But you'll be sore, especially if you're not used to it. You're going to be more sore. But the only way to be less sore from your training is to train when you're sore. If you don't train when you're sore and you wait till you're done being sore, your body thinks it has more time to recover and it's not going to stop getting sore. And that's why like people who do once per week oftentimes are sore every single time they train, because their body thinks it has an entire week to recover. So there's no rush to recover, right? So it doesn't mean you can just do anything you want at whatever intensities you want. But that was a very long-winded way to say the only way to get less sore from your training is to train when you're sore. If you don't train when you're sore, it will just, for the most part, will probably just keep being sore each time you train. To a degree, not necessarily. So hopefully that helps. All right, where are we? Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, training is so underrated. Glad I've been able to help. Thank you. Does walking 10,000 steps per day count as cardio or just neat? That's a what's the word I'm looking for? 22? Not really. When I look at cardio, I personally like to define, like if I'm giving targets to my clients, right, for cardio, I give a certain amount of minutes I want them to do per week. With the cardio, I'm not counting walking in that. I'm giving them, okay, I want you to do like lower to moderate intensity, steady state cardio, and, do 90 minutes for the week of, biking, elliptical, whatever it may be, right? And then maybe also a step goal. Not always, and it depends on the individual. And some people I'll give walking targets to. But what I'm trying to say is your steps count. It certainly counts. It's probably more like neat, but either way, no matter how you define it, it's just kind of semantics. Like you're still getting more or less calorie burn by going up or down in steps. So it doesn't really matter how you define it. But myself personally, I like to keep them separate. It just helps gauge activity levels better. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a difficult question. I did a video topic on it once a long time ago too, and I got some comments like, this didn't help at all. Like you didn't answer the question. It's because it's a really hard question to answer. But it definitely counts. Like it counts a lot. Walking's great. But yeah. 55 went from 233 to 165. That's awesome. I had my testosterone check last month. It's 616. I didn't get the results of my free test. Why do I still have low T symptoms other than sex drive? That's I don't think 616 is low. I think that's normal. Hold on. Look up how do we do this? Normal testosterone levels in males. So you said you're 55, right? So average is 552. Yeah, that's normal. You're good. I mean, according to this, I guess I'm just taking this random thing. We all know if it's on the internet, it's true, right? No, of course not. But to my knowledge, that's a normal range for just about anybody, honestly, at almost any age. So it's not low, in my personal opinion. And especially the fact that you do have a good libido shows that as well. Keep in mind, like anytime you diet, anytime you lose weight, your testosterone is going to be lower. I don't know how recently you lost this weight, but if you're close to your finish of a diet prior to a reverse, or even the early stages of a reverse, your hormones are going to be out of whack still. Your testosterone is going to be low and all this type of stuff. So it can be not necessarily the greatest thing to do or the greatest reading to get hormones checked when you've been dieting for a long time or have a huge long history of dieting, because they're going to show that they're lower than normal. But once you come back up and your hormones start to improve and stuff, you're going to get a different reading. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea to get the readings, but you would probably want to follow it up again later once things have returned more to normal to get a more accurate reading. But I think you're good. Very welcome. Learned a reverse diet. That's great. Now I'm starting my second reverse after my last cut. Is it normal for people to have a higher calorie number that is just too low? Mine seems to be 1,500. Looks like you said something again, because I'm not quite understanding that. Hold on. Starting maintenance after reverse was 3,500, cut for 7 months, slowly decreasing when needed. Work physical job and train 4 to 6 days per week. I need to read this again. Is it normal for people to have a calorie number that is just too low? Mine seems to be 15 hours. So I think what you're asking is it normal for your calories to stay low in a reverse and not be able to gain? Not necessarily. I mean, everyone responds differently. There's a lot of different factors. You won't remember if you lose weight, your maintenance calories will be lower than it was before because you now weigh less. So you have to factor that in too. Not that I've never seen anybody reverse diet to higher calories than they were before. That has happened before, but there's again a lot of different factors involved here, including activity levels and adherence and things like that. So you won't necessarily get them as high as they were the previous time, but if you are struggling, it takes time sometimes. And I've seen it too, where people will really have a hard time getting their calories up, but then at a certain point, boom, their metabolism just takes off. Like it just lags for a while. Especially there's that kind of like that magic time of reversing as long as you cut. So I've seen that frequently where somebody may be lagging behind, having a really hard time, and then all of a sudden their metabolism just takes off. And if I look back, it happens around the time that they've been reversing about as long as they dieted. That's not abnormal to happen. But there really is no normal either. I mean, everyone responds so differently, and there's so many factors. The most important thing is, okay, stay diligent. All right, how well are you adhering to the plan? How well are you monitoring and adjusting and taking it from there? Because it can just vary so much. What calorie increase amount do you recommend weekly to avoid weight gain? Would 30 to 50 be a good increase? Yeah, 30 to 50 is kind of a normal, regular increase, but it depends on how well you're responding and how well you're adhering. And I like to make increases more based on what is happening each week versus just a set, I'm going to increase this exact amount every single week, no matter what. No, like if you're gaining too fast, you're not going to want to keep increases, and you're just going to keep gaining even more. If you're losing while you're reversing, well, you can increase your calories faster because you're in a deficit. If you're maintaining, then the 30 to 50 might be good, but it just kind of depends. This is awesome. I love this. Yes. Right. I'm 45 foot 10, 193. Sedentary job, we're pretty similar actually. But exercise, daily weights, and walking on rest days at 2,800 calories, but still responding well. Would love if I can get to 3,000 plus. Yeah, it sounds like you will be able to, most likely. It's great. Great job, Adam. That's fantastic. I did a reverse diet for an entire year and then went on a slight surplus over that to help build muscle because after losing the weight, I was skinny fat. Yeah, I'm not able to body fat percentage I want yet. I figure I'm really not in a rush. That's so huge. I'm in a healthy place both physically and mentally, so I have my entire life. That last sentence, I have my entire life. Like I want to like get a stamp, put that on people's foreheads because it's so important. We're always rushing the process all the time. It just kills. You know, we don't need to be in such a rush all the time. And the more you rush it, the more likely you are to fall into the yo-yo mentality and get discouraged. And man, it's like expectations. I talk about expectations a lot because I truly do believe that happiness is the difference between expectations and what you actually get. So if we expect all these crazy, amazing things to happen and something that would be almost impossible to live up to, and then it doesn't happen, then you get really discouraged and sad that it's not happening. It's like the reason you're so unhappy is because you created these crazy expectations to begin with. You're better off, like, I don't want to say like you should have low expectations, but maybe no expectations, right? Like just follow the plan, follow the process, and see what happens, and whatever happens, and adjust accordingly so you're not getting wrapped up in the results. But if we get too caught up and it needs to happen at a certain time and, you know, a certain pace by a certain date, you know, that can take things. It's not abnormal for people to actually be seeing really good results, but they think they're getting terrible results because of these crazy goals that they set for themselves, and they feel like they're failing and they give up. And it's like, man, you're doing fantastic. Like, just because you wanted to lose 50 pounds in 90 days doesn't mean that the 20 pounds you lost in 90 days is bad. You know what I mean? So again, a little side rant there, but I really want people to slow down, chill out. There's no rush. It doesn't have to happen right away. It's not going to happen right away. And just be patient. And no matter what, it's never going to be the thing that makes you happy. Like losing weight, getting in better shape, having a six pack, anything like that. It's never going to be the thing that makes you happy. Like, yeah, you'll get there and you will be happy for a moment. You'll be proud. And that can contribute a little bit, but you're still going to be left with, okay, like now what? And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people do gain weight back, besides just metabolism and all that stuff and sustainability and things I talk about all the time. But it's just you can't see results forever, continuously. It's literally impossible, especially when it comes to fat loss. You can't lose weight forever, because if you do, you just die, right? Like, you can't continuously see results forever. It's going to stop. It's either going to stop because your body's fighting you too much, you can't stick to the plan, or because you reach your goal. But if you reach your goal and then you're just like, well, now what do I do? No, I'm done and I don't care anymore. Well, then you just gain the weight back because you stop living a healthy lifestyle. And there's got to be something else, right? That's why setting goals and going after them is so helpful, because it keeps you more motivated and enjoying the process. But if that stops because you've reached your goal, it's really easy to fall out of the healthy lifestyle and undo everything. There's got to be something more than just the result to keep you going, because it's going to stop at some point. It's going to. Literally impossible to keep seeing results forever. Continuous body composition improvements. You can do that to a degree over the big picture, over years and years, through multiple phases of building and reversing, or building and cutting, and whatever else you want to do. There's different things you can do, but in terms of like from the start to the end, like there's just no way. So there, more of a rant. Yes, a long game. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes. Oh my gosh. No, that's fantastic. That is so good. And that's another thing, like kind of relating back to what I just said. I have seen people who have lost weight that you couldn't even like fathom, like 200 pounds. But then they gain 10 back and they think that they're a giant failure and they're miserable, or if they can't lose like, I have 10 more pounds I need to lose and I just can't do it. And I'm so fat and miserable. And I hate this and I'm so depressed. And it's like, you lost 190 pounds even by adding that 10 pounds back. like that's a giant success. What would you have thought when you had started before you lost 200 pounds that you were even down 150, right? So you gained 50 pounds back. That person who started at 450 pounds and then ended up at 300 pounds at 450 would have been beside themselves, ecstatic that they got to 300 pounds or whatever it may be, right? Never forget that. Never forget where you come from. No, never forget where you started, and don't always compare to, well, I had this one arbitrary goal I need to get to make me happy. It's never going to happen. There's got to be something else. There's always going to be something to be chasing, and that's what kind of keeps it going. It's the means to the end that changes you, not the end. If that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, 40 pounds since October is fantastic. You should be proud. And the longer you diet, the harder it's going to get, the slower the results are going to be. And again, this is why we take time to reverse out and come back later if you feel like you have more to go. But even then, even when you do get there, again, you need something else to keep you going. There's got to be something other than just the result. Is there a way we manage water retention on high carb days? Even though I would lower my carb on other days, it goes away very slowly. Is it fat gain on those days I eat only maintenance calories? No, not really. Everyone's different. I mean, you might be doing a little bit too high carb on your high carb days. It's hard to say. Everyone responds a little different. And I've seen, in some cases, people do a couple of high carb days and they'll actually lose weight. Other times they kind of blow up a bit and they have a hard time getting that weight off. If it's just a temporary thing and it comes down and you're still seeing the same amount of weight loss on average per week, then it's nothing you should concern yourself about, because it's going to be factored in every single week. So regardless of seeing that spike on the scale, which probably you don't like very much, if it's being factored in and it's the same every single week, this is another reason why we do averages for the week and not any individual day, then it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Now, if you see a spike on the scale and you have a hard time losing it, and you keep getting stuck by doing so, maybe you don't respond very well to that. Maybe you're going a little bit too high carb, and you need to make some adjustments. Most people do fairly well, at least kind of keeping somewhat steady, and it keeps them going by having at least 1 or 2 high carb days per week. But in some cases, there's just something about it. Their body doesn't respond well, and we take them out. There's always individuality. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. It's nice to know that your message is being heard sometimes. Yes. What's your favorite meal to fill you up, and do you have any grocery haul videos? No, I don't have anything like that. I've never been a fan of, like, what do you call it? Full day of eating and this and that. For one, it's just not something that that excites me to do. And I've always hated other videos like that. I know I don't watch them, so that might be part of why. But also part of it is I don't want people to start getting the impression that, well, because this is what I eat, that's what you should eat. Or if what they eat is not on the list of what I eat, then it's bad. Or you know what I mean? Because it doesn't really matter. Whatever you enjoy is fine. It really just kind of comes down to hitting your macros for the most part, and eating a mostly nutrient-dense filled diet, but also enjoying some flexibility with including things you do enjoy that aren't necessarily clean, and that's fine. As much as I'm not a bro anymore, I still eat a bro meal every day for lunch, and it's almost the same every single day, and it has been for 3 years now, and somehow I haven't gotten sick of it. But it's basically chicken breast and rice and asparagus, and I sprinkle some chia seeds into my rice as well. Fills me up. I enjoy it. And the thing that I like about it is it's just I never have to think about what I'm going to eat for lunch. It's repeatable. I just know every single day this is what I'm going to eat. No need to worry about, okay, what do I do? How am I going to make this work and this or that? I just eat it every day. And then I have more flexibility through my other meals. Sometimes I'll switch out the brown rice for quinoa or for jasmine rice, or I used to like farro, but I have a gluten intolerance now, so I can't have it. But just some other grain, and that's kind of like my go-to. But as far as a go-to of like if I'm going to have a high calorie day later or a high calorie meal later, like if we're going to go out and I'm going to have a lot and I know I'm going to be eating quite a bit or drinking more or whatever, I do like to make a big serving of egg whites to fill me up before we go out. As it's low calorie, it's all protein, and it eats lots of calories. So I'll just make a huge serving of it and eat that to fill me up. I don't like the term cheat day. And there's nothing wrong with having a day of eating more than you normally would, or having foods that you normally wouldn't, and having a low nutrient dense fun filled day. I just don't like the term cheat because it implies you're doing something wrong, and you're not. Like, when has cheating ever been a good thing? Like cheating on your spouse or cheating on an exam or whatever. That's never a good thing. It's always bad, and that's why you feel guilty. You're calling it a cheat. If you cheat on something, you feel guilty. Cheat on your diet, you're going to feel guilty, and if you have to cheat on your diet, it's probably not very unsustainable. But again, it doesn't mean there aren't times to have untracked days, meals, whatever, and that's fine. And it's just different for each person. I just don't like the term cheat. Call it a free meal, call it an untracked day, whatever. I just don't like the term cheat. But how do we know how much carb do we need? Thank you for taking your time to answer. Yes, of course. It's experimentation, seeing how your body responds. I usually start somewhere around a 50% increase from your deficit calories. But it's different. Some people do more, some people do less. It all depends on how you respond. It's all trial and error, seeing how your body responds. All right, no more questions. As a reminder, if you are interested in having online coaching and getting some help with reaching your goals, and if nothing else, taking the objectivity out of it. It's so hard to be objective with yourself. I'm here, and just head to my website and fill out an application on the online coaching portion. And again, I will shoot a video for you just like this, going over things, and shoot it to you. If you don't see a response in your email within 24 hours, then check your spam, because I always respond within 24 hours, and it goes to junk mail a lot. And if you're not following me on Instagram, follow me on Colin DeWay. Let me check if there's any more comments, and then I'll get out of here. Oh, we got some more. Let's see. 152.57 male, about 14% of body fat. I'm looking to gain muscle. So is 2,100 calories with a macro split of 220 carbs, 180 fat, 55 right. So I can't tell you if that macro split is right or not, because I don't know how your body is responding. I don't know your history and things like that. That's just an arbitrary number. What you're going to know is based on how well you're responding and if you're getting it at an appropriate rate. So I mentioned this earlier, but if you're in a lean bulking phase, I recommend around 0.2 to 0.5% of an increase on average per week in scale weight. Now, again, that's not the be all end all, and there's a lot of factors. But I have an old video. Let me pull it up here that you might want to check out. It's called Reverse Adding to Lean Bulk, I think. See if it pops up. Right there, right on top. Reverse diet to lean bulk. You might want to check that one out. Copy and paste this here. Oop. I can do this, I swear. But the protein is more than enough. It's plenty. 150 would be plenty, but more is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not going to be used for building muscle. So there's other benefits to protein, like the increased thermic effect of food and helping you feel full if you struggle with that. That's helpful early in a reverse. As you get your calories higher, having really high protein will actually work against you because it'll make you so full. But usually no more than about 1.2. So what would that be for you? I mean, you're there, 182. So if you want to maximize and make sure you're getting as much as you can out of the protein, then that's fine. But if you want to reduce it a little bit, you can. The other macros look fine. So yeah, I would say that's good. And then just monitor and see how you're gaining, and adjust accordingly as needed. Hopefully that's helpful. You too. Cheers. All right. You guys are all very welcome. Thank you so much for watching. And we'll do this again at some point. All right. Have a good weekend.